So today we'll be going over some student skills and like note-taking, test review skills, AP history skills, and some document analysis. Ooh, next Wednesday. Okay, wow. Yeah. That's really early. Okay, where was I? So before we move on to any of today's content, don't forget to follow Fiveable on their Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you haven't already, make an account on app.fiveable.me, and that'll give you access to this year's live streams. So a little bit about me. Last month I did Intro to APUSH, and I'm Rebecca Zhu, and I'll be a sophomore next year, and I took APUSH last year. So outside of academics, I am a competitive synchronized figure skater and a dance choreographer for my school's musical. So this is my go-to note-taking method. I always use the Cornell method. I think that it's a nice way to take down notes during lectures because you can just write keywords on the side and then main notes on the right. So this is your typical template. You don't have to follow this template. It's just a guide. So these are very efficient, and so these are great for class notes, textbook notes, and summary. The summary portion on the bottom acts as a great test of whether you know the material or not. And I like to write my notes in caveman speak, so that way I'm not just writing whatever's on the slide. So that's a nice way to paraphrase things and make sure it's written in your own words. And when I'm writing my notes, I only write down the important / didn't know material. So I don't usually write down fun facts unless I think they're going to help me remember something. So, okay. So ways to review. So usually I'll do my Cornell notes, and then when I get home, I'll make outlines or mind maps out of them. And that's how I review for stuff. So with outlines and mind maps, I'll have examples in the next couple of slides. And so just reviewing and making them, even one-pagers, and I do them by unit or by topic, and it really helps me retain the info and understand what we're learning in class. So videos, definitely watch the Fiveable live streams. They'll be held weekly. John Green Crash Course, Adam Norris, they're all there on YouTube. And then definitely group up. So grouping up with friends who are taking the same class, grouping up with classmates, it'll just make it more fun, and you guys can work through the essay questions and cram together. Practice, definitely. So this is for the practice exam. So for the AP test, definitely do a lot of practice, do it timed, and then go through it to make sure you know where you made the mistakes. So definitely read the review books. I recommend Crash Course. It's perfect for cram sessions. So, oh, okay. Well, school started today. Well, okay. So flashcards, I like making my own. I know there are pre-made ones out there, and there are definitely Quizlet lists out there, and those are definitely great to use. But I found that flashcards and making my own really helped me with key terms and key people. So these are unit outlines, and I find them super helpful when reviewing for a unit test, and it helps me with what comes before, what comes after, during the Revolutionary era, what act comes and then what act comes next. I find that really helpful. So on the bottom, this is my example of what I actually used for class. And so I make them when I'm studying and reviewing, and I do it when I'm in the unit, so that when I'm studying for a big final or a big test, I have it ready to go and I can just study off of it. So this definitely triggers memorization. Write down the key terms, key people, key events, any vocab. So down here you can see the Nixon Doctrine, and just anything that you want to remember, put it on this. Pretend that you get this sheet and you get to take it into a test as your one thing to take in. So next we have the mind maps and the flowcharts. And this is kind of like an outline, but it's a more visual representation of the connections between all these different people and events and ideas. So they can be messy and rough, or they can be colored. I like color coding mine because I found that it really helps me with the different topics and the different themes. So yeah, it's like an outline with actual lines connecting the ideas. Let me put the slides in there. So the slides are in the call to action button. Or wait. Okay, now they are. So afterwards, you can go and definitely look through them. So one-pagers. This is also kind of like a unit outline, but I use it more for stuff that I'm not sure with. So it's a combination of images, word splashes, like acrostic poems. Definitely use symbols here, repeating borders. Like in this one, I have all the Reconstruction amendments as my repeating border. And so that's like a main theme for the unit. Oh, and if I'm going too fast, definitely say so in the chat because I can go back and review some more stuff. And if you have any questions, you can type them in the chat or put them in the Ask a Question tab. So I think this is a great review activity. I used it when I was studying for quizzes, tests, like my AP exam. And again, just like the outline, make it as if you could take this into the test and use it. So yeah. So next we're going to talk about like history skills, and this is the technique portion of APUSH, and it goes hand in hand with the content, but it's really important that you apply these skills to the content. So, and this is kind of just a framework of how to organize your arguments and like how to form them when you're writing. So developments and processes, that's identifying and explaining historical processes like knowing what like manifest destiny means. So, and making connections. So that's supporting claims using historical reasoning. Yeah. And then sourcing and situation. So we'll talk about this in the next slide. And this is, I like using the acronym HIPPO. I found it really a really helpful way when writing the DBQ, and that goes with document analysis. And then we have contextualization, which is identifying events that happened before or after the topic and understanding how they shaped the event. So claims and evidence and sources. So a lot of documents have authors who make a point in their quote. So being able to find that point, being able to understand that point, and then being able to write off of that point is also a very important skill. And then argumentation. So after you see those documents, being able to develop a claim of your own and being able to back it up with all the evidence in the documents. Okay, so this is the historical reasoning. So these three parts are like the framework behind a lot of the APUSH prompts. So like comparison, you'll see a lot of compare like post-war eras of World War I and World War II. And then you can completely argue that a different event in the future than the event that the topic suggests. So back it up, you can definitely write something that the topic does. So continuity and change. So like the prompt with this one is ideas of American Okay. So does the sound work now? Because my video's back on now. So give me a thumbs up in the chat if you hear me right now. Okay, awesome. So I'm going to continue where I left off. Sorry for that. So I was talking about the DBQ. So the DBQ is, of course, document-based, and like I said before, I like using the term HIPPO for it. So in the next slide, we'll go more in detail about HIPPO. So the first part, the H of HIPPO, is historical situation. So what happened before the document was made, or what happened around the time the document was made? And then the I is intended, the I is intended audience. And so this must be very specific. It can't just be people or Americans. And the intended audience usually agrees with the author. So in a lot of multiple choice questions, you'll get like what group will agree with the author of the document or the person mentioned in the document, and it's usually the person. So the group will usually agree with the author. Purpose. So why was the source created? Yeah. And then point of view is who created the source, what groups were they part of? So what is the author's bias? And so with the author's bias, does the author's bias set off the purpose of the document? And then outside info. So this isn't really the document analysis piece. This comes with when you're writing your DBQ, you want to include pieces of outside info that's not stated in the document. So topics that are relevant to the document. So as long as they aren't explicitly stated in the document, like they can be referenced, but as long as it's not stated by name in the document, you can use it for outside info. Yeah, and I think down below, it says explicitly state the historical situation of document blank is. So that way when readers are going through it, it's easy to find and they can just go through your document. Because when they're reading your documents, when they're reading your DBQ, they're going very fast. So, okay, let's hold up. Okay. So we'll do 2 images that aren't typical documents, and then we'll move on to real ones. So in the chat, can you just tell me if you want me to focus on photos or like quotes or excerpts today? Okay, so is the audio working for everyone? Because someone said the audio is glitchy. So in the chat, just tell me whether how well the audio is working. Okay, so I'll put a poll up. Okay. So the poll is up. Definitely vote. This will help me guide through this next part. So this next part is all going to be document analysis and then just going through and annotating them and noticing like what the document is saying. Okay, so if you're on right now, please vote for the slide. Okay. So this document is from the Manifest Destiny era, and Manifest Destiny was the divine right for the U.S. to span from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And so this is kind of justification for the whole movement to the West. So this is something you'll definitely see in class. And wait, let me turn on the pointer. So this right here, that's kind of like an angel, and that works with the whole like divine right portion of it. And then, so this right-hand side is representing the East Coast. And then this left-hand side is the West and all the unknown. So you can tell on the East that it's brighter there, and it looks a lot calmer. And then on the left-hand side, you can see the stormy clouds, the mountain range. And then here you can see that this figure in the middle is pulling wire. So she's bringing technology to the West. And we have our settlers moving west and then driving out the Native Americans and the buffalo in the back. And you see the rail, like the trains and the railroads. Just the whole move west is bringing along technology. So we have 2 bar and 3 votes for passages. So I'll be focusing more on passages, but we'll still do the image parts. If you want me to spend more time on something, definitely say so in the chat. I'll be keeping my eye on that. And then ask questions if something's unclear. So, okay, so this is another one. This is talking about the embargo of 1807. Right here you can see, "Oh, grab me." That is embargo spelled backwards. And so this is the backstory of this is that Britain and France are impressing American sailors, and they're claiming that Americans are actually British Navy runaways. And so, like, they're stealing cargo, and it's not going too well. So Jefferson puts an embargo, which pretty much stops trade and closes the British or the French. And so here you can see superfine, which is probably referring to sugar. And then we have license down here. And you can see the British flag, the Union Jack back here. And yeah, so this is basically saying that the embargo hurt more than it helped. So this is our first real document that was actually on a DBQ. So first things to notice are the source. Okay. The first things to notice here are the source. So the date is 1765. And when you're looking at the source, like say there's a date written in the document, like down here, you want to go with the date that's written in the source. So when you're doing your historical situation, outside info, definitely use the source that's written up here. Don't use the dates that are written down here. But in our case, 1765, that's also in the newspaper. So, and then we have the stamps. So with those 1765, we have the Stamp Act, and then here it says stamp. So that's just confirming that this is probably about the Stamp Act. And then it's from Pennsylvania. So that's one of the colonies where a lot of action for the revolutionary movement happened. So down here it says life, and then we have skull and crossbones, which is referring to death and the whole like being with Parliament and being with Britain is eventually going to kill us type of idea. So yeah, they're basically comparing Parliament's control to death. And then on the left we have liberty, and here it says like goodbye, goodbye, liberty. And then, so with life and liberty, I think that's referring to John Locke and the fundamental natural rights, so life, liberty, and property. So this is definitely referring to that. And what the document is saying here is that they're against the Stamp Act because it's hurting them. So this is our next document. And so that was it for the images. If you want more image practice, I've linked the whole like DBQ things to each of like these parts. So if you go back to my slides, you can click through them and you'll find like the whole DBQ. So this is from, oh, okay. So click directly, okay. Oh. So Betty Friedan, she wrote The Feminine Mystique in like post-World War II, and that was whole, like, women should work and they should start getting outside of the home to work. And so here, oh, okay. So we have, it's about women in the source title. And then if you read through it, I think the most important part that I highlighted was she is rated lower than common labor male. So this is about wage discrimination. So here it says wage discrimination too. And it says that she's paid less, and yeah. wage discrimination, and then that they're using the profit that they're getting from cutting the wages to exploit women. So this is she's obviously for equal pay, and when you study Betty Friedan in your class, you'll see that she was a very pivotal figure in getting women outside of the home and actually working in the workforce. So this is our next document. So am I going the right pace? Can you just give me a thumbs up in the chat if you understood what I just went over? Okay, so this is document 3. So none of these documents are related. I just pulled them from random DBQs just so we could go through this. So here it says he was a Republican governor from the 1970s. And so Republican 1970s, that means that Republican, like pretty much like today's Republican. So this letter is written to you by a law-abiding citizen who feels like she's discriminated against in favor of dope addicts and welfare cheats. So this is against the whole welfare state and all the government welfare programs, not all the government welfare programs, but the government welfare programs that were set up in the 1960s by the Democrats. And here it says, sorry, this letter is not typed, my typewriter was stolen. So that doesn't really mean anything, but it just it gives it another side to the document. So 1970, Nixon was president, and Lyndon B. Johnson was president before him. And so Lyndon B. Johnson, he implements the whole Great Society programs, which were programs that were meant to reduce poverty. And so Nixon, he does something called the New Federalism, and that's trying to move Great Society to state and local governments, which can't pay for these programs as well as the federal government did. So he's trying to slow like the whole Great Society program. And then this document is criticizing welfare programs, and it's saying that they can't take care of normal law-abiding citizens. So we got a couple of thumbs up. Okay, great. So this is like our second to last document. So here we have John Winthrop. He was the governor of the Mass Bay Colony, and this is his City Upon a Hill speech. And the City Upon a Hill speech is like a huge sermon that he gives to like the settlers right before they get to Mass Bay. So take a couple of seconds to read through it, and then I'll click through what I have on here. Okay, so this is 1630. We have the Mass Bay Colony. And then down here it says, the eyes of all people are upon us. So that's really saying that they're like the test sample. If they don't work out, then they're going to be made fun of. They're going to be like, their sins are going to be exposed. So more on Mass Bay. Mass Bay was a Puritan settlement. And so some of you guys did world history. So like you guys know what Protestant is and how England like made their own Church of England to protest the Catholic Church and like leave them. So Puritans are Protestants, but they wanted to purify the Church of Catholic practices. And they left England because of persecution. But even though they left because their religion wasn't being tolerated, but when they got to Mass Bay, they weren't tolerant of other religions. And so they're very religious, they have a strong work ethic, and they don't really believe in religious diversity. So this whole idea of City Upon a Hill is like kind of being a like shining example. And you'll see this as we get more, as we move on in history and as we go into the different units. Yeah, so what this document is kind of saying is, if this settlement works out and if they like believe in God, then more people will follow to the settlement. And if they don't, then it's not going to work. So this is document F. I pulled this from the same DBQ collection as the last one. And so Roger Williams, he was, oh, okay. So Roger Williams was a dissenter. So he didn't really believe in the whole no religious tolerance. He wanted more religious freedom in the colony, and he was exiled to Rhode Island because of it. So he's the first governor of Rhode Island, and Rhode Island has the only true religious freedom in all the 13 colonies. So the point of view here is that he doesn't agree with the Puritan views on religious diversity, and he wants religious freedom. So when you read through it, you'll definitely see that not a uniformity of religion, so not just one religion. And so if you want more practice, if you want to see more of these prompts, you can check them out on Five Bowls website, and I've linked it down below here. And we have a full collection of SAQ, LEQ, DBQ prompts in there, and they're all separated by the different periods. So if you have any lingering questions, okay, thanks, Donald. I appreciate it. So definitely, if you have any questions, put them in the chat or in the Ask a Question tab, and I'll answer them. So. So again, you can find these slides in the call to action button. They're down here. They should be open. They should be open anyone who has the link. So, okay. So last call for questions. Thank you guys for sticking around. It means a lot to me. And I'll just give you guys a couple more seconds if you have any questions. Okay, so I guess no questions. Well, thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Five will be back for, oh, we have a question. Yes, so I'll pull up the links right now. Okay, so it's also in my slides, but you can also find the essay prompts in the chat. So I just posted them. So thank you for sticking around. There will be more next week. So